Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I like to discuss the deadline that is about to expire for a fast-track US-UK post-Brexit deal to be rushed through Congress. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news in politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So yeah, this is not exactly surprising, and regardless of whom was occupying the White House, it would have seemed inconceivable that Boris Johnson would have been celebrating this week with the real start of the US trade deal emerging. But it's an important footnote in our post-Brexit folly and should be noted. Earlier this month, actually no, I think it might have even been January when they started, the Daily Express, which is a very hard right-wing Brexit supporting paper, was talking up the prospects for the US trade deal again. Cabinet Minister Liz Truss has apparently been working on getting a trade deal ready to put before Congress for the past few months. Naturally, it would have involved giving the US exactly what they wanted in terms of market access, without really getting much, if anything, in return. And for those not already aware, I refer you to the proposal that the US government came up with for this US-UK trade deal while Trump was still in office. And although people will insist that such a proposal is just a starting position, and this is absolutely the case in most trade negotiations, we were completely desperate. I have been arguing for some time that we would have negotiated a deal that is almost exactly the same as the proposal. And further credence was only given to this belief when you compare the trade and cooperation agreement that we agreed with the EU and compare that to their original proposal. Don't half look a lot similar. And Boris Johnson doesn't want to deal with the EU. Just enough of one to get, the people in the public and his party to swallow Brexit. But he does want that US trade deal, needs it. So of course we'd give them whatever they asked for without any arguments in the same way. I mean, we tried to argue with the EU and it didn't work. To get the deal, it didn't work. So to get a quick one with the US, of course, we're not going to put up much of an argument. But it seems that the US government want a few things, certainly one thing definitely that we are not at the moment willing to give. Some support for the Good Friday Agreement, for example. So the deadline, which is later this week, is going to be missed. That means that we won't be able to use the Trade Promotion Authority, which is supposed to speed up agreements of the trade deal. So as I understand it, what this does, a US device, that avoids a lot of messing about between the President and Congress, if they were at odds with each other in terms of objectives, which I suppose quite a lot of the time they will be. It lets the White House know what Congress's aims are to provide the parameters, because obviously there's no point in the government arranging a trade deal that Congress will then say no to. So for the final agreement to pass through the legislature quite quickly, it's like, look, this is what we want. You sort something along those lines and we're fine, as my understanding. But it's going. Deadlines come and going, or this week. And there is no great anguish about this in America, only in Britain. The reporting in this country works along the lines that President Biden is prioritising the Boeing-Airbus dispute. In fact, Johnson's last-ditched attempt to get the US trade deal was to agree to suspend the punitive tariffs on Boeing that were applied by the EU as part of this trade war that Trump started. Now, the US government have been providing vast sums of US public money to this US company, which of course gave it an unfair competitive advantage over Europe's Airbus. So the EU retaliated in the obvious way. Boris Johnson obviously thought that siding with an American company over one that provides 12,500 jobs in the UK would ingratiate himself with Biden, who would play ball over the Brexit deal. In fact, all it actually does is to show us that at the drop of a hat, he will screw over any part of our economy and risk no end of British jobs just to sell us out to his wet dream of turning us into the 51st state. Actually, that's a bit unfair. If we were the 51st state, we'd at least get to elect some representation in Congress ourselves. As it is, we'd just be a vassal state, wouldn't we? But although Biden is genuinely concerned about the spat between Airbus and Boeing, and I've no doubt that is what he's spending his time on, especially as a trade war between the US and the EU is benefiting only China right now, at the cost of both Western powers. We all know that this issue, if it didn't exist at all, we'd still not be meeting this deadline this week. Both the White House and Capitol Hill have been loudly critical of the way that the UK government has been behaving with its most important neighbour, Ireland. Now, they've both made it clear that a US trade deal will not be forthcoming under these conditions. So an aerospace trade dispute, it's a nice convenient excuse for anyone not wanting to embarrass the UK government, really. After all, this particular dispute is not down to the actions of the UK government. That being said, a more thoughtful look at it, and what do you conclude? A trade deal with the mighty UK is much less important than a trade dispute between two private companies that make planes. So even though, you know, if you look at it through the lens of the trade dispute, our trade deal, our comprehensive free trade agreement, is less important to America than a single aspect of trade with the EU. In other words, there's no way of sugarcoating the fact that isolated after Brexit, we are way less important on the world stage, not more as was promised. But in terms of where this leaves the US trade deal now, so it leaves it, from my point of view, thankfully, dead in the water for the foreseeable future. It will, of course, resurface if we don't get rid of these Conservatives soon. If they tried to get one through Congress now, it would just be slowed down by endless objections from members of Congress. And that's assuming we sorted ourselves out with Northern Ireland and got Biden's blessing. I mean, so many members of Congress will obviously need to be seen to be representing the major economy of their region. So there'll be all sorts of little objections thrown in there. It would take longer than Boris Johnson has to get the deal. That leaves them realistically needing to negotiate a new trade promotion authority to streamline the process. Now, the UK government have talked down the need to do this. I haven't seen anyone suggesting that we stand a snowball's chance in hell of getting the deal without it. Even, as I say, if we properly committed to the Good Friday Agreement and removed those concerns. So our pathetic government are doing what they always do when met with the realities of Brexit, downgrading their expectations massively. So what we wanted was the holy grail of a free trade agreement with the United States. This is the Brexit prize. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Liz Truss copying EU trade agreements around the world only fools so many people. Sure, you'll see some people, oh, but she signed all these deals since Brexit, it's going wonders. She hasn't signed any. Arguably, you might say Japan. That was it. And that's a worse deal than the one EU have with them. You know, if someone's willing to listen, it's easy to show that either the trade agreements we have now are the same as we had with the EU or worse, because you can just compare them side by side. And even given that, you know, many of them by number will be the same because, you know, the vast majority of our trade doesn't necessarily, it's not like each country is worth the same amount. So if you look at it by the amount of trade, the vast majority of our trade now is with countries where we either have no agreement or ones that are worse. You know, the net effect to our trade is negative. None of our post-Brexit trade agreements stand up to even casual scrutiny because there is an EU equivalent document to compare it to. But the US trade deal would be different. The EU do not have a free trade agreement with the United States, and it's probably safe to assume that they're not going to for the foreseeable future. So even a terrible free trade agreement could be sold as a major victory. Pains in the arse like me wouldn't be able to put it side by side with the EU's version because it doesn't exist. You can try to point out how bad it is, but most people don't have the patience for that level of detail. You can try and show how our trade figures are still going down, but that takes years. To show that trend will take years to emerge, by which time Brexit may well be too entrenched in people's minds if they've not seen it beforehand. Now, the US free trade agreement is the prize, but they can't get it. So now they've downgraded their expectations for an agreement on whiskey. Actually, on that point, good thing about vlogging as opposed to blogging is you don't know which way I've spelt whiskey. I'm not going to tell you either. But yeah, the no US free trade agreement, but if we're very lucky, we might get a deal for whiskey. Not entirely sure how that will compare with the many bilateral agreements that the EU have with the US for a whole range of goods, but I'm not entirely sure that it's going to compare favourably. Still, if we do manage to get this, I fully expect the Daily Express to find some way to sell it as the greatest deal of the century. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.